عسلامة، انتم تسمعوا في تفنن تكوين بودكاست. في كل حلقة نستدعوا خبير نناقش معه محور من محاور الثلاثة اللي يرتكز عليهم برنامج تفنن التكوين، واللي هما الثقافة والتراث، التيك والسوفت سكيلز. تفنن تكوين هو سيكل بيلوت أوروبي تونسي بتاع تدريب لمدة عام للمهنيين في سيكتور كولتوريل في تونس. البودكاست هذا من إعداد وتقديم لحبيب الترابلسي وإنتاج تفنن تكوين وتونيزيا بودكاست. اليوم ضيفنا مايك غوغان. Il est le fondateur et directeur de la Virtual Experience Company. Sa carrière اللي فاتت 20 سنة خلته يولي من أهم الفاعلين في المجال هذا، وكان حاضر في برنامج تفنن التكوين وقدم سيونس autour de la technologie de l'information et de la communication. وتوا نخليكم تسمعوا شنو حكينا مع مايك غوغان في الحلقة السادسة من تفنن التكوين بودكاست. Bonne écoute. Hello, Mike, and thank you for accepting our invitation in Tfanen Takwin podcast.
Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation.
To start with, how to explain virtual experiences?
Right. Well, I started this business back in 1999 with the intention to enable people to explore historic locations, cultural locations that were otherwise inaccessible to them. The first projects we did were at Shakespeare's birthplace, the birthplace of William Shakespeare, which was the upstairs was inaccessible to disabled people. So what we did was we created a real-time experience. This was in 2000, 21 years ago, which enabled disabled visitors to virtually walk around the upstairs of the house. The intention was to enable them to have an equally valid experience that actual visitors were having, so that if they were interested in looking at the furniture, they could go and they could walk over to the corner of the room, admire a piece of furniture, maybe open the door by clicking on it, the door would open, they could find things inside, they could pick them up and rotate them and examine them. So it was the intention, as I say, was to create an experience that was not the same as being there, but an equally valid experience. And the same thing applies, or we've been applying the same thing ever since by reconstructing places that no longer exist, by creating models of places that are remote and where people can't get to because they're simply too far away. And the intention is to enable people to get a feeling and an understanding of these cultural locations in the absence of them actually being there. And I think it's a very important distinction to make, that a virtual experience should never be intended to be a replacement for a physical visit. Because to stand in the middle of the arena in El Jem, for example, to stand on the ground where the gladiators stood is a unique experience, and you can't replicate that. But what you can do is give people a sense of the space. You can give them information about the space so that before they go, they can familiarize themselves. After they've been, they can look again and they can remember the place. So that, as I say, is the key thing. It's an alternative, but not a replacement for actually standing in the real place.
Cool. In the same subject, Mike, you have developed several projects in Tunisia. What exactly does it consist of?
Okay, well, the first project we did was at the Palais Sarsaid in Tunis. And that project had a number of different threads to it. The first objective was to document the interior of the palace, which meant scanning it using very high definition laser scanners and photography to create a record of the palace as it existed at that moment. So that in the event of any further damage or deterioration happening, we had something that was a record of what existed at that time. Of course, because the palace itself has an incredible mixture of different cultural influences, as does Tunisia itself. And I should say, incidentally, that my role with the Virtual Experience Company is to bring in the technology and to bring in technical and other kinds of expertise. But it's very important to recognize that the culture is Tunisian, and I would never presume to tell Tunisian people about their culture. What we can do is we can help, in this case, young Tunisians with new technologies to help them to explore their own culture. So with the Palais Sarsaïd, we identified a series of lines of inquiry that would help to provoke young people in Tunisia to think critically about their culture and about their history. So we looked at lines along the lines of architecture, and in the palace there are influences from Italy, from France, from Islam, of course, and so on and so forth. And the intention was to get kids looking at these influences on architecture, but also on food and on language, and explore where these influences came from, and to recognize the unique combination of influences that make Tunisian culture unique. This culture that doesn't come from a single line. It doesn't come, from Arab culture or from Ottoman culture or from French culture. It comes from this incredibly rich mixture of all these. So so we used the virtual tour of the Palais Sarsaïd as a portal where young Tunisians can explore and think critically about all these influences, and we hope give them a sense of the richness of the palace itself, and also a sense when they look around and they see what are very often everyday things in their lives that very often we walk past without thinking. But to actually look at those and say, aha, this is from, this is a French influence. This is an influence from Islam. This is an influence from the Ottomans. And so they can identify with this culture that surrounds them. And of course, Tunisia is blessed with just such an incredible richness of cultural heritage, both in its built heritage, in its language, in its food, and so forth. So hopefully we get young Tunisians looking at this and feeling, yeah, this is ours. This is who we are.
Okay, you talked about culture in Tunisia, but what encouraged you to do this work in relation with culture in Tunisia?
Why Tunisia? Well, it was a combination of circumstances. I had done a lot of projects in the UK and in Ireland, and then in over the last 10 years, I've done a lot of work in Oman, working for the cultural advisor to the Sultan of Oman, and I had also done work with some people from the University of Cambridge. In fact, I was contacted by them because we've been looking for interesting, challenging projects to do, and the UK government had come up with this Cultural Protection Fund, which is a fund designed to help to protect cultural heritage that was at risk from conflict. And they had identified a number of countries where they felt that we could do some good work, and the University of Cambridge invited me to partner with them on a Cultural Protection Fund project. And quite coincidentally, I met with Olfa Ramburg, who was just in the final stages of preparing the exhibition at the Palais Sarsaïd, and she invited me to Tunis to visit the exhibition on the opening night, and which I very willingly accepted. And and when I was there in the palace, I thought, this is just a phenomenal place. And so we designed the project around the Palais Sar Said. We worked with Rambo Foundation and with the Institut National du Patrimoine and with the University of Cambridge, and we developed this project, and it was amazing. And of course, that then introduced me to a whole range of other people in Tunisia. And I continued to work. I got some more funding from British Council, which enabled me to carry out a lot of other work, exploring how we can use new technologies to engage young Tunisians in their heritage. And we worked with we did a lot of work at LGM, and I'm hoping that we can do a lot more. But we've only scratched the surface of the potential for what we do in Tunisia, and I look forward to getting back again.
Mike, you've had an experience with Tunisian artists and cultural actors during Tfanen Takwin program. How can you evaluate this?
To be fair, my contact with Tunisian artists and the cultural sector in the sense of art, theatre, and so forth has been not as much as I would like. I have done some work with a games development company, Historio, and I was invited to mentor them when they were a startup. I have been lucky enough to visit to see some great events at the Institut Français.
Français, oui.
And we made a movie with Leila Ben Gassem about the history of Beni Khaled, which we launched last year. I mean, there's so much going on, and there's and so much clever stuff. Historio are doing some really good stuff with augmented reality. I went to this event at the Institut Français where they were doing this art with virtual reality, and it's been really unfortunate that it hasn't been possible to get back to Tunisia for the last year, but certainly it. There's a lot going on, but one we need for these events, these live events, to start happening again, and secondly, I need to be there to enjoy them and to explore how we can collaborate and make some more stuff happen. You can do an evaluation before and after. So on a training session, you can see you can measure how much people know, and then you finish the training session and you measure how much they know after that. I mean, what I would really love to do, and I unashamedly will say this, that what would the best evaluation would be to develop it, would be to find a project, and I'm actively looking for funding to develop a project with the people that we had on the masterclass, for example, that we did, where we can actually run a live project and use the training, because it's only by actually putting the content into into real life that you can measure how much impact it's had.
So, as a conclusion, Mike, is the use of technology essential for culture now?
Right, that's a great question. Okay, the first thing I would say is that the most important thing, and I said this at the masterclass, the most important thing is the cultural heritage and the story around the cultural heritage. The next most important thing is the audience that you are trying to address and to whom you are trying to tell that story. In the case of Tunisian culture, what brings the Tunisian culture to life is the is the ownership and the reaction of Tunisian people to their own culture. That's the core thing. When it comes to technology, the technology is the tool that we use to tell that story. And that technology could be a papyrus scroll, it could be a piece of paper, it could be a book, it could be a movie, or it could be virtual reality. The key thing is to use the technology to tell that story. And of course, with new technologies, we can engage people in ways that are appropriate to them as the audience and are appropriate to the culture. So, for example, to build a reconstruction of a historic site enables people, and this is something that wasn't possible 40 years ago, unless you could do an artist's impression. Now, using new technologies, we can build a reconstruction, and you can walk inside, and you can see the what remains today in the context of what used to exist, and that opens great opportunities to increase the understanding of the heritage, to increase the access to the heritage, and to enable more people to understand it. So new technology is not essential, but what we need to do is we need to identify where new technologies can enhance the story, and where we can take advantage of what new technologies can do to increase the access, to increase the understanding, to increase the appreciation. And there's a huge opportunity, and whether it's virtual reality or a simple 3D panoramic tour or whatever, there are great things that we can do. But we must always remember that the culture is what's important, and we must not be driven by the technology. We need to be driven by the culture and by the audience, and then we use the audience, or we use the technology to bring that culture and that audience together.
Thank you, Mike, for your time, for your collaboration with us in Tfanen Takwin podcast, and see you soon in Tunisia.
Thank you very much. It's been a real pleasure working with you guys, and I really hope that we can find ways to collaborate again in the future.
Tfanen Takwin est soutenu par Tfanen Tunisie Créative, un projet d'appui au renforcement du secteur culturel, financé par l'Union européenne, dans le cadre du programme d'appui au secteur de la culture en Tunisie du ministère des Affaires culturelles. Le projet Tfanen Takwin est une collaboration du réseau des instituts culturels nationaux de l'Union européenne, mis en œuvre par le British Council et piloté par le Goethe Institute Tunis.